We're talking about how grief is work. And how many of y'all ready to retire? How many of y'all are sick of the work that comes with it? I have two powerhouses who are going to help you have a clear path. Be able to buff up your resume a little bit so that when you are put to work, you have the skills and the qualifications that you need to be able to deal with something that is just completely unavoidable. So, without further ado, I would like to bring Dr. Mariscal first. Thank you for joining us. Tell everybody who you are, who you help. And both of you ladies are return speakers. You guys were part of the very first Gone Too Soon retreat. So I'm so happy to have you guys back again. And I love, love, love that you guys are continuing with the work that you're doing in the grief space. So let us know.
Yes, and Joy, I'm so happy that you are creating this as an annual event. I think that's wonderful. So I'm Michelle Mariscal. I live here in St. Petersburg, Florida, and I primarily work with my business online with two different modalities to help people move through, and that's the operative word related to our topic, move and action steps. So the grief recovery method, and then also the tools and techniques of heart math. So all of those related to helping us really be in our heart when it sometimes feels most hard to be there.
Thank you. And then we have you, Miss Kelly. Welcome back. So happy to have you. Please introduce yourself. Let everybody know what you're doing and just how you got into this space.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And Michelle, I am in St. Petersburg. We're going to have to do coffee. I did not realize we live in the same town.
Ooh,
so
look at you connected
I
people.
know connections, awesome connections, awesome connections. So, yeah, I am with Grace for Living After Loss. And my program is really faith-based and neuroscience informed. So I combined powerful biblical principles mixed with practices and processes that are rooted in neuroscience to help heal our minds and bodies from the trauma of grief and transform it into a healthy life that we actually look forward to living, not just surviving or despising.
Oh my goodness. Being able to connect neuroscience science to grief is just mind blowing. Like my degree is in psychology, and so I definitely have an appreciation for the internal effects of how the things that happen to us affect us in the long term. So I love how you make that connection, and I just want to get straight into it, you guys. So we're talking about what happens when you avoid grief, right? Everybody thinks if I just put grief in a little box and I deal with it when I'm ready to deal with it, that I'm in control. But absolutely, it actually turns out to be in reverse. And so, the first question that I have for the panel: avoiding grief can manifest in different ways. Some people stay busy. Some people only focus. Like if me and my sister lost our parent, I'm just focused on my sister and how she's handling it, and I want to make sure she's okay, and I'm not paying attention to how this has affected me. So, how can individuals recognize when they're avoiding their own grief? Because I think some people don't even know that's what they're doing. They just get so engulfed in the busyness and or just the day-to-day life. Like life still has to go on. That so much time has passed by. You blink and it's been a year. You blink again and it's been 5 years. And to the person on the outside world, 5 years is like, oh, that happened 5 years ago. But for you, because you haven't grieved and you haven't done the work, the feelings are still fresh, just waiting to come out. So I'll start with you, Kelly. Tell me your experience and how you see this manifest.
Yeah, I actually see this manifest in two extremes, right? They either stay so busy and launch themselves into life as a numbing mechanism. Like if you can just stay so busy that you don't have time to feel anything, that's one strategy. And then the other strategy is numbing through the forms of alcohol, drugs, TV, shopping, like or working out, whatever. These are all numbing mechanisms that we just try to busy ourselves with something else to take our mind off of the pain of the grief. And as you mentioned, this is not a long-term, this isn't a cure or a solution. You're going to run out of steam at some point. At some point, you're going to have to sit still. either illness or life, or you'll literally just run out of your own energy. I see this so often. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with my story, I lost my mom to suicide, and then I lost my son to an accidental fentanyl overdose a year later. And I see so many parents launch themselves into the work of advocacy around the fentanyl specifically topic and the opioid epidemic, which is a noble work. But I see people doing that out of a place of brokenness. It's like if they can just save enough kids, it'll somehow redeem the fact that they lost their child. And there is a place for that work to be meaningful on the outset of your healing. You know, once you've done your work and you get to a place where it's balanced and helpful and not hindering you. But I see so many people doing it out of their brokenness to try to feel like resolve their own grief. And that is not a good recipe. That's not a good strategy. So I always look for balance, right? So one of the indicators for you to know if you're avoiding your grief is how balanced is it? Do you have a sense of like urgency that you have to do all these things or the world's going to fall down? You know, are you doing it from a place of feeling the need to save everyone else to try to redeem whoever it was that you lost? That's a big red flag indicator that you haven't done your healing work and you're not approaching it in a balanced way. The other thing is, how comfortable are you with taking 10 to 15 minutes and feel your feels? Like, how comfortable or uncomfortable are you to sit with your feelings and express them? If that makes you very scared or uncomfortable, you have not engaged the work. You've been busy numbing and distracting. So those are a couple of kind of telltale signs for you to know if you've been running from your grief or you've actually been facing it.
Yes, I would echo a lot of those points. And it's funny, I've heard myself in conversation over the years say, I'm not sure I would have a PhD if I weren't avoiding my grief. And what I mean by that is, at the time that loss was weighing so heavy on me, I was still a graduate student. And then it just occurred to me, well, just stay in school, stay busy. I'm working full time. I was teaching group exercise at that time also. And let's just go to school too, so that I just don't have to feel anything. Let me just over exercise. So for me, that was not clear to me until actually many years later. Was I able to see that picture and recognize, well, I was just kind of running on a hamster wheel, trying to avoid this very painful, it seemed to be a period of time in my life that first there was this very big loss of my little brother. I was 31, he was 28, and I didn't want to be on this planet without him. And then what kept happening is more loss and more loss. It was trying to get my attention. And so for me, it was kind of this complete lack of awareness of, am I even feeling anything? Have I replaced feeling with thinking, which was kind of my way of dealing with it. The other thing that is a little bit of an alert for me is when I start experiencing this kind of anger that comes out of nowhere. The smallest things might set me off. And that's because I tend to live in my head quite a bit, that I pay attention when I have these episodes of anger that just keep coming up that seem a bit irrational. So I've learned to just sit with that and ask myself, what's underneath this anger? Because typically it's a fear of something and or some loss that I experienced, and I just tripped over it. So, by this time, there have been enough losses that there may be different memories that come up, and so anger can be my hello, I'd like to be acknowledged again. And I know it's again, and we're going to do this again because you can. So, like Kelly was saying, recognizing how comfortable are you being able to sit in that sadness or, whatever that emotion is that's coming up.
So I want you guys to know when I do these interviews or panels, I don't always know what I'm gonna share. Like I just listen to you guys and so much stuff comes up. And I do that because I want the people who are watching to apply what you guys are saying to their own personal experiences. And I do it just in real time. So when I listen to you talk about that, it reminded me as a child. So I lost my sister. She was 15, I was 16, and I say a lot, when I found out about my sister's death, I was on the activities bus on my way from a football game. I was an athletic trainer, and we had won, so they was rowdy on the bus. Everybody was, in a good spirit, and something on my spirit just wasn't like, I felt like I had a headache, but I really didn't have a headache. I just wanted to go to sleep. Something wasn't right. And so I got a call it was my stepmom's coworker, and she was trying to ask for my mom's number. And I just gave her the number. I didn't ask no questions. And that was, to me, was God protecting me from finding out on that bus. Because I think I would have turned that bus upside down if I would have found out in that way. But my mom was able to get the news, drop off my cousins who was with her, because we had to drive over county line to go be with my stepmom once we found out. In that moment, I remember that day like it was yesterday. Like I'm telling this story and I see myself on that bus. I see myself getting in that car. And this happened all the way in 2005. Like this happened almost 20 years ago. And so when that happened, I remember that day. I remember pulling up to my stepmom's house. I remember my dad standing outside smoking a cigarette. I remember walking right by him, not even saying anything, and going straight to hug my stepmom and cry. And then I don't have any other memories of grief until I exploded years later at a church sermon that said Lazarus died, and Mary was like, if you were here, Jesus, my brother would still be alive. And like that was what I couldn't even contain myself in the middle of the sermon hearing that, because that's how I felt in my heart. And so the literally only memories I have is when she died, at her funeral. She was my half sister, and none of her peers knew me. None of her, like her family knew me. Obviously, I'm a part of her family, but her peers, her community, I went up there and I just felt like a bunch of empty faces, people I don't know, and I'm up here saying this is my sister and I'm grieving. And so as a child, I had these experiences. It's people who are experiencing this as adults who don't have anything to reference. So it's easy to avoid it. It's easy to just go back to regular life because we don't have any reference to say, well, what does grief work look like? Like literally that was the beginning of my process. And that happened a few years later. Well, it wasn't until 3 years ago when I hosted the first Gone Too Soon retreat that I had conversations with my stepmom about, well, what happened that day? Well, how have you been dealing with it? Like, I have never had a conversation with my dad to this day about how has he processed my sister's loss. So these are things that are happening to us, and we're not even having spaces with the people that we care about the most. Or I have a relationship with my dad. I talk to him, but I have never talked to him about that. So before I go to the next question, I don't know if you guys wanted to add your insight or perspective, but that has been my experience in avoiding grief, is that when you just don't know. So it's not, I don't want you to think avoiding grief is like the plague, like don't do that, we're condemning you for avoiding grief. It's a natural thing for some of us to do because we just don't know. We don't know what else to do after that. That seems to be the case a lot of the times.
Yeah, I have a comment on that. I mean, there's so much room for opportunity culturally around how to deal with grief. And I feel like people are forced with two bad choices. One is there's a whole camp that says you never recover and you're going to be sad forever. And there's a whole group of people that prescribe to that. So like, if that's my choice, then I would be over here and I'm going to just get busy and not deal with it or whatever, because I certainly don't want to be living in that camp. You know what I mean? And so I feel like people most often are left with the choice of embrace grief and be sad forever or ignore grief and just try to go on about your life. And I feel like that's what is most often talked about. That's why I love events like this. That's why I love people who talk about the work of grief. And actually, to me, it's mourning, which is different than grief, the work of mourning and processing the grief so that you can get back to living a life that you love, not one that you're just ignoring it or whatever. And quickly about your point too, children and adolescents handle grief very differently than adults, and they compartmentalize a lot more than we do. And that's actually a defense mechanism, a healthy thing for them, that they can step into it, feel it completely, and then set it aside and go to sports practice and then visit it again. And so I recognize that. And my daughter was 12 when my son passed away, and she didn't grieve until like 2.5 years later. And then it just hit her, and she went through a 6-month, pretty heavy, pretty intense processing of the loss and dealing with it and whatever. So just a quick word about that, about adolescents specifically. But then, yeah, 100%, there's zero shame or condemnation. You have done what you knew to do to keep yourself as well as you needed to be to get to this point. But with new information, we have new opportunity to be better and do better and get another level of healing, another level of wholeness, and live, in a better way. So if you're coming across this information and you recognize, oh shoot, I've actually been avoiding or numbing, this is just an opportunity and an invitation to do the work and actually heal from it.
And so I want to piggyback from year one, gone too soon. When you both were speakers, you talked about the difference between relief and recovery. And then Dr. Mariscal, that was my first time ever. I know this is like news to everybody knows this in the grief space, but I never knew that the myths behind the grief stages, understanding that was supposed to process terminal illness, your own terminal illness, and you're trying to face that, versus this is how we deal with grief. We go through these stages, this linear process. So to bring it back here, it's crazy that we're here and we're asked to do the work, and we don't have a roadmap. So I love that your presentation this year is, let's not go down the wrong path. There are paths that you have choices, you have the ability to. One of the goals of this retreat is that I want you watching this right now to feel that you are the expert of your grief. Not Miss Kelly, not Dr. Mariscal, not Joy Renique. You are the expert of your grief. But the only way that you are going to be able to do that is for you to be able to look inward and for you to pay attention to the things that you're not paying attention to. So I wanted to just tell if you upgrade your ticket, you get access to those old presentations from then. I say, they're relevant. Like right now, I could watch it and it's going to apply to what's going on. So even though they recorded this a few years ago, it's literally ageless and timeless information available in the All Access Pass. Another thing that's available is your stress test that you are talking about. So I wanted to bring that up, Dr. Mariscal, tell them, because people understand stress. When you're stressed, it could turn into illness. People get cancers. People get sat down. Like you have to sit down when you get too much stress. It's the same thing with internal grief, not dealing with it, bottling it up. Why do we only look at grief as sadness in relation to the death of a loved one? That's not all that grief is. Grief is loss in transition, change, and not being able to go back to how things were. And our body and our brain and our functioning society doesn't allow us the time we need to adjust to this new transition that is going to happen to everybody always. So I'm going to bring you up to talk about stress and making that connection as well.
Sure. Yes. And the reason that I thought about adding that as a gift is so often we don't make that connection, that these underlying emotions, if we're not drawing them up to look at and to do some work around and I always say grief recovery is a buffet. There are so many different ways in which we can learn to process and be with those emotions. And in the process of being with our emotions, they shift and change. And so one of the things in the stress and well-being assessment that is available is to be able to see maybe some of the impact that we didn't realize was happening. But also a part of that assessment, which I love, is looking at what are the resilience tools that I have that I utilize, or if the assessment shows I know how to do this and I don't use these tools, it's an opportunity, and the group coaching call will be an invitation to start looking at, does this kind of modality where you learn how to sit within your heart, their breathing processes. But what I like so much about the Institute of Heart Math is that it is based on the science of the emotional signals going from our heart to our head, and then what is happening out of that. So if we are consistently sitting in these emotions of sad and worry and fear of bringing up this conversation, and not allowing ourselves to take little baby steps for ourselves, to move and work with those emotions, those signaling those signals from the heart can really be causing some imbalance in the nervous system, which then causes imbalance in the hormonal system and the immune system. So through this gift and the offering, it's just another level. Sometimes for me, if I have information, that's power. And learning these things, recognizing, oh, wow, okay, this is another invitation then to actually look at these emotions that might be causing some dis-ease in my body. I may not be sleeping well because my nervous system is all out of whack and out of balance and not synchronized. That's a word Heart Math uses. And so all of that stress that occurs in the body as stress, when we are not allowing ourselves to move and process emotions.
And you literally just answered the question that I was going to ask next. What are the signs that avoiding grief is causing more harm? How can you recognize when it was time to face it head on? And Kelly, before you answer, I want to invite you guys, if you're watching live, this is an interactive channel. So if you want to be able to ask questions directly to Kelly or Dr. Mariscal, please, please, please let us know what questions you have. Let us know how you, if you had a wake-up call, like I share my wake-up call was at church. I didn't go to church that day thinking that I was going to be crying over my sister and laid out in the front of the altar. That was not my plan for the day. Years later, after my sister had passed away. But do you know, in your own experience or somebody that you care about, where it just came out of nowhere, it started showing that it's causing more harm? And Kelly, tell us your insights on this subject.
Yeah, there's several signs that you can look for. And I know, so for me, in my case, when my mom passed away, I felt very strongly that the hospital system had failed her, the social services system had failed her. My dad had a hand in it. It was like a very gnarly situation. And for a little bit, I became like consumed with the anger of it and trying to get justice for my mom and seeking answers. And I was so like, just so I know what it means when people, you busy yourself with something else because it feels productive, which is so much better feeling than sitting and being sad, right? So I got consumed with this righteous anger and I wanted justice for my mom and I wanted people to be accountable and all this kind of stuff. But for me, I kind of ran on that cycle and I realized I was like on a hamster wheel. Like I was running, but I wasn't going anywhere, right? And so then I had to get to a point for myself to just really ask God, like, is this a fight that you have asked me to fight? Like, is it my job to pursue justice in these answers? And do I have the capital to go after it? Money, emotionally, physically, like, do I have what it takes to go fight this battle? And the answer was no. He was not calling me to fight that. And I didn't have the capital. So I had to lay it down and trust him with that and face the work of healing and begin the work of healing. So if you find yourself, consumed, being irritable is something that's like, if you're, and Michelle spoke to this, like if you're irritated and irritable at everything, that's a sign that you're probably have some underlying stuff. Again, if you can't talk about the passing, either you can't talk about it out of, you're just uncomfortable to talk about it, or you can't talk about it without crying, like that's a sign that like there's some stuff under there that needs some addressing, that needs some working through, And I think I think Michelle and I are such an interesting complement to one another, because all of her talk about heart work and how it balances with your mind from a neuroscience standpoint, we know that the process goes, an event happens, you have a thought about it, which produces a feeling. And then that feeling further informs your mind to have another thought, which produces another feeling. It's this cycle, right? So from a neuroscience perspective, our feelings are input for us, directly reflecting to the quality of our thoughts. So if we have feelings, it's an invitation to take a look at our thought life and what are the thoughts that we're holding or rehearsing about this grief and loss? And are those thoughts true? And do they serve us? Are they helping us? Right? Like, so from a neuroscience standpoint, it all points back to thought life and thought work. And our feelings absolutely are an essential, vital part of the process, because our feelings inform us to the quality or disquality of our thought life. Yeah. So I think it all works in harmony with one another, right? But I think I know I got off on a rabbit trail, but I just wanted to circle back on Michelle's thought, because I feel like it all is so holistic. And you spoke about this, Joy, like grief and loss doesn't just affect one part of you. It's a very holistic experience, and your recovery needs to have a very holistic approach and response, right? Like you can't just do one thing and that's just going to settle grief. It affects you holistically. You need to treat it and address it holistically. And the other thing, Joy, that you said that I love is that everybody has to discover for themselves what their path is. That being said, I think we do a disservice to people because we talk about grief in very vague, very big terms. Like it's this big, mystical, unknowable, unsolvable thing. And I hear all the time, like, there's no right or wrong way to grieve, and the timeline's different for everyone. All of those things are true, but you could say the same thing about health and weight loss, right? Like you could say the same thing about weight loss. There is no right or wrong way for weight loss. It's different for everyone. The timeline is different. That being said, there are some principles and practices that are helpful. And there are some things that can keep you from having success in weight loss. And I'm a very logical person. I'm a very type A person. Like when I went through this, I'm like, give me the how-tos of grieving. Like just tell me what to do. Stop talking in big elusive terms. Just tell me what to do, right? And so that's like my process, and when I work with folks, it's very much that way, because that's what I needed and that's what I wish I would have had. And I think so, yes, 100%, everybody who's watching, you're in charge of your own recovery, and make sure you seek out and find the language and the process that works for you, and keep looking until you find it. And when you find it, keep working it until it works. Like be hungry about your own recovery. Fight for your life, because it is your life. It is your life. It's the quality of the rest of the time that you have left. So as long as it takes you to find the solution that works for you, and as long as it takes you to learn that solution and master it, it is worthwhile. There's very little, if anything else, that's more worthwhile than your livelihood and your happiness and your passion about the rest of your days that are before you. So I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, I'm like over here like, yes, that is what we need to hear. One thing that came up when I was listening is grief imposter syndrome. So I just told you the story about my sister, how personal, how I felt. You saw it from my eyes. But because she was my half sister, at that time, I didn't have space I felt like, how can I grieve? I didn't live with her. I didn't wake up with her every day. I didn't go to school with her. She was like, how dare I bring my grief to her mom who lost her daughter, her child? And so I definitely went through this internalization of, I don't even know. I don't even want to make my grief bigger than what it is, because how dare I do that? And so if you can relate to that, that is another part of grief that nobody talks about. Nobody, there's no support group for grief imposter syndrome, right? And so that was something that I processed during these grief retreats. I started to realize like how personal. And then when I started talking to my stepmom, the most beautiful thing she said was, she was like, no, I hate how people think by bringing up Sharena is going to make me sad. I think about Sharena every day of my life. I love talking about her. I love fantasizing about how she might have been, what kind of job she would have, what kind of life family she would have created. Like, that doesn't make me sad. That's just a part of my reality. And I enjoy being able to indulge in these conversations. So me and her bonded so much 20 years, almost 20 years later after my sister's death, over me finally having the courage to come to her and say, well, this has been my experience, and this is what I thought, or what I don't know, and asking questions and being able to get those answers that will help me go to the next step of my grieving process. Me being able to talk about it, like you just said, now I don't feel the tears welling up when I'm talking about my sister. I don't feel the heaviness. Like, I miss her. Today is her birthday. Happy birthday, Sharena. Well, no, tomorrow. Today is my little cousin's birthday. Tomorrow, I forget the day of the week. Today's the 18th. Tomorrow's my sister's birthday. And so I can say and be like, just I can honor her. I can feel connected with her. I can feel like she's still here in some way, shape, or form. And that was not possible when I was avoiding it. That was not possible when I wasn't taking care of that part of me that needed to be able to remove that blockage, to be able to connect better with my sister, even though she's not here. So the question that I have for you, Dr. Mariscott, is, let me pull it back up. How do you help people who feel overwhelmed by grief and they think that avoiding it is the easier path?
Yeah, and Joy, I think just going back to what you shared there a moment, I was having a thought. In relation to the question, what are the signs that avoiding grief is causing more harm? Really, when we find ourselves constantly and consistently, any time we think of our loved one, and it takes us down a dark alley without those thoughts or memories that come that are of a happy nature or an appreciative nature. So that's something to pay attention to also, that if we're just consistently drawn down into these sad memories and there isn't anything else, that's an indicator that we're really needing to keep looking, keep finding those tools that are going to help. Because in grief recovery, so my brother died in 93, so now he's been gone longer than he was 28 years old, so he's been gone longer than that now. And still, I think of him not every single day now, but I will think of him, and much of my thought process and emotional life around that is, I wonder what he'd look like at age 60 or something like that. And it doesn't really take me into sadness. It's almost like a curiosity. Sometimes the memories will just be memories of having done things together, and they're okay. Like, there's a point in grief recovery where you can experience two emotions at the same time. You can experience this sense of joy and this sense of loss at the same time. And it's a very, I don't know any other experience that brings that. But there is a way in which, when you have the tools you've processed and you are now living in your new identity of who you and your passed on loved one is, that can be an experience that happens more often. And it's kind of there's something very humanizing about that. And I think that's that kind of leads into this next question. How do I help people who feel overwhelmed and think that avoiding it is easier? Is recognizing that as a human being, we have this whole continuum of emotions. And in our culture, we really are bad at one end of the spectrum. And so grief can bring that opportunity. And I will use that word when I wrote this book, Growing Through Grief, the alchemy of healing through loss. I That's a part of the answer to this. Like, there really is something new that arises out of this experience in life that you are having, that I am having. And the other thing that comes to mind in relationship to this question is that um, sometimes clients, when I'm speaking to them to just see if we're a fit and if the work feels like a fit for them, they will say something like, I'm just afraid I'm going to start crying and never stop. And I just try to encourage that, well, you know, I'll be right there with you. I know that crying is that is an expression of grief. That is a way, especially in our body, in our physiology. It is a way that grief and those really challenging emotions get processed. And um, many of my clients tell me that after a really good cry, they actually have this sense of lightening, like they really feel like they unloaded a little bit. Um, so that's a part of it, but also the uh, the overwhelm, that is also another big concern, because in the emotional overwhelm and confusion, it can feel very scary to confront any of it. And so I always talk about baby steps, just one step at a time, maybe in that early very acute time, just creating some routine, getting up and taking a shower, taking care of your self care needs. That is a step, that is an action step. So, just really encouraging that grief is normal and natural, although in this culture, we're not taught that. And that, to your point earlier about um, we don't want anybody to feel bad or judge themselves for finding themselves in this place and realizing, oh my goodness, I've been stuffing it down and not doing the work. We're always on this learning journey, and you're here listening and learning, and maybe encouraged to just let yourself do things a little different in a culture that does not support grief and loss in a normal and natural way. Many indigenous cultures hold grief circles. There's this belief that when one is not well in our community, the community is not well. So they come around that individual and allow and support whatever needs to happen for that grieving person. So I think that's it.
And I wanted, before I let you answer the question, Kelly, I wanted to say a lot of times we've focused this conversation on us avoiding it, but then we have people around us that's like avoiding us or avoiding the conversation or avoiding the feelings. So I brought that up as with my stepmom. I was avoiding coming to her about it because I thought it would make her more sad, or I thought that I would be what's the word, projecting my stuff onto her when she has her own stuff. Another example, a positive example, is like I said today. So today is my cousin Chubby's birthday. He passed away last year. The last time I remember, I have a picture that I posted. The last time I remember seeing him, he was probably 11 and I was like 18. And so I was supposed to see him really soon, right before he passed away. And I didn't get a chance. And so that really hit me hard. And I called my mom and I was like, what can I do? Should I just fly up there? Because they live in Texas. Should I do this? Should I do that? I know a little bit about grief stuff now. I know how to support them. I could just call. Like, I was trying to figure out where my role was in supporting them. And another thing that I learned to do, like, as the time goes by, because I learned, like, everybody's there in the beginning, because that's what my mom said, was like, they got a lot going on right now. Give them some time to figure their stuff out before you just come in and take over. Or anyway, you might be more supportive later. And so I was looking at, like, an old picture of one of my kids, and she commented saying, this reminds me of Chubby, like something funny that my kid did. And it was years ago that she made the comment, but I took a screenshot and I sent it to her. And I knew now in my grief awareness and the stuff that I've been learning is that wasn't a trigger for her. That was a nice moment that she can remember Chubby in a way that is like endearing, like, oh, look, he lives on in the spirit of Joy's kids. He's also, I can see him in other people's families and other people's children, and his spirit will live on. So I do want to say happy birthday, Chubby. Today is his birthday. Tomorrow is Sharena's birthday. I see somebody in the comment. My cousin says happy birthday. So I want to honor them, but I want to show you that there are ways that you can not avoid, that you can be direct and you can support people that is not triggering and that is not a setback for them, but that it gives them permission to like talk about it, because sometimes they are the only ones initiating the conversation versus you being able to say, I thought about you and Chubby today. Let me reach out to you randomly, because they're thinking about it all the time. So I just wanted to add that before I go to you to answer the question. Like, when somebody feels overwhelmed by grief and they think grief is overwhelming and they think avoiding it is the only path, what is your advice? And I'm going to get off the screen, but I'm still here listening. I'll be right back.
So my antidote, and I'm my own flavor, y'all. I'm not everybody's flavor or cup of tea, but for me, if somebody's overwhelmed by grief, they need to be overwhelmed with thought. Hope, rather. If you're overwhelmed, you need to be overwhelmed with something else. If you're consumed with something, you need to have something bigger and better that can replace that, right? So when I see people that are overwhelmed with grief, to me, the biggest thing they need is hope. They need to know that this isn't forever. This doesn't have to be forever. This thing that feels like it's so heavy and it's so forever doesn't have to be forever. I think that hope and the truth and a solid path for them to get there is the biggest thing that they need. I think we are wrong in a lot of ways about how long it takes to recover from grief. It is hard work, and time is part of the equation. You can't, time is a necessary component for healing, but we've seen people go through our 12-week program and have massive breakthrough and massive momentum and massive shifts. So it doesn't need to take years and years. The applied effort, the intentional effort and consistent action, you can see tremendous improvement, tremendous shifts in your energy, tremendous just increase in a short period of time. And so that's the biggest thing that I think, if people can have the light bulb, because that's the thing that did it for me when I was overwhelmed by grief when my mom passed away, and I thought I would never recover. I was like, well, I'm just going to be sad for the rest of my life, and I came into agreement with that, and I was sad, and I was just going through the motions. Until, for me, I saw a speaker share, she shared how she had survived the Rwandan genocide, this horrific story of death and loss and tragedy. And I saw her, though, and she was full of hope, and she was full of joy, and she was full of life. And I was like, wait a minute, if she can do it, then I can do it. And I tell you all that, like, hopelessness was broke off of me in an instant, in that meeting, at that event. I discovered and decided that I could recover. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how long it would take, but I had so much energy and momentum because I saw for the first time, and this was like 9 months after my mom passed, I saw an example of someone who had done it. And that broke that hopelessness, overwhelm over me. It gave me the energy to pursue it because I knew it was possible. So for me, if I see somebody that's overwhelmed with grief, and every time if I talk to people, have any kind of conversation, and I will say to all of you listeners here, if you take nothing else away from me, please know that there is hope. It is 100% possible for you to be 100% healed and walking in a life that you enjoy, that you're passionate about, and that celebrates your loved one and includes your loved one. You don't have to leave your loved one behind in a previous season. You can integrate them into your life now and design a future that includes them, that you actually enjoy living, and that is full of purpose and full of all the good things that life has to offer. And so whenever I talk to anyone, it's like, if you take nothing else from me, take that, like, know that it's possible. And I hope now that you've seen myself and you've seen Dr. Mariscal and you've seen Joy, like, you should be without excuse, right? Like, your brain has been confronted with people who have learned how to do this. And so now you have to examine for yourself the path and the way that you want to go, because we're here to tell you that healing is absolutely available to you.
So as we close up, I want to let you guys know that Kelly's presentation will be available this Friday. I am I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to say like what my favorite takeaway is. I'll save that for Friday. But Kelly did an amazing job with giving you a clear path on what roadblocks and what dead end roads that you don't want to go down when it comes to your grieving process, and instead what things you can do to have a smooth journey. You know, it's not going to be a short journey. It's not going to be an easy journey, but it still doesn't have to have a bunch of road bumps and all these things that prevent us from being able to heal and recover. So thank you for that. I want to go to the comments. I see Miss Peaches said, I'll help by offering therapy, journaling, and allowing yourself to feel all of the emotions that come with it, listening to the old videos, to old videos that have their voice, their favorite smell, journaling, etc. I love that. Everybody knows I love, my company is a journal company, and I literally just started therapy for the first time this year. What I will say to that is that when you're looking for grief support, two things can happen. You either wait until you just are at your wit's end and you felt like you tried everything on your own and you finally need help, or before I go to the or, when I say to that, I'm also a juvenile probation officer. Like, I help people whose kids are getting in trouble. And then by the time they get to me, the parents are done, but we're just at the beginning of our process. The difference between me though is that we say, you know, we don't send invitations to the justice system. Like, we're not telling you to commit crime. We're not inviting you here. We are here to correct it and then get you back on track and go on your own. When you're looking for therapy, they're there to help help the load. We're talking about grief is a lot of work. Find somebody to carry the load with you before it gets too overwhelming. Because then the or part is you don't look at all. You don't even realize that this is available to you because you're so overcome by your grief that that's not even an option. And so why I started therapy for the first time, my degree is psychology. I understand the process of therapy, but what made me finally decide is that it's not that I thought I was smarter. Like, I struggle with the process of finding it. Like, I need to find somebody who's gonna meet me where I am, that's not gonna tell me stuff that I don't already know. Like, I had all of these mental things that I was going through that prevented me from getting the help that I really needed to be able to have a soundboard. And I have a really good support system who gives good advice, good people who are very well meaning, and they actually have helped me talk myself down out of certain situations. But it's not the same from someone. And I'm saying a therapist, but there's so many modalities. Like, I'm about to let you guys close out and let you say how you work with people. You have a whole membership, a whole program where people are able to get community, people are able to have that access, whether it's a coaching call or a group session. There's so many different things that is available to you, and you can find out what's for you, as opposed to thinking it's only one way. But if you know you're specifically dealing with something, find somebody that specializes in what you specifically deal with. Kelly talks about the logic behind it. If you know you're a logical person, you want to find somebody that's also logical so that they can connect with you better, instead of you talking to somebody who's trying to only focus on your childhood. Yeah, your childhood has to do with why you're reacting the way you're doing, but somebody has to start where you're willing to start. And the only way to do that is by giving yourself the chance to open up and try it out and not wait until you're at the end of the road. Do it now. Do it early when you're feeling okay. When you're showing up for something like this is the perfect time to go ahead and get some more tools and some more resources so that you are prepared when those grief waves come, because they surely will. So we see Alonda says, I'm enjoying, and I realized that I have to grieve 4 to 5 different things that was never done because I just keep moving. My dad passed 44 years ago, and my mom, 22, a failed marriage, 14, and I lost my sister. Yes, 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 Alonda. I thank you so much for sharing this. We didn't even talk about that compounding effect of one thing after another thing after another thing. So you're not even avoiding it. You can't even catch your breath, because before you could process one thing, another thing is grabbing your attention. So I definitely understand that. No, don't apologize. She said sorry, happy birthday. No need for an apology. But you literally, this question that you asked is what I was alluding to. I don't know how or where to start, and I know I can't do it on my own. So I didn't even read your comment and look at you. That's literally what I wanted you to get from it, is that being here is a good place to start. Listen to how these ladies help. Maybe it's one of them that will help you further along in your journey. But I can guarantee you, somebody this week, somebody in this retreat could get you a little bit further along, so that you, remember I said, so that you could be the expert in your grief journey. We may be grief experts in our own right, but we're not the expert of your grief. So let me go ahead and give it over to you, Dr. Mariscon, then I'll end it out. But make sure you tell people how to stay connected with you and work with you in the future.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Yes. So my website is energym.org. I also spend quite a deal of time out on LinkedIn. I'm currently doing a lot of work with grief in the workplace. So we spend so much time at work. I'm really attempting to have more grief-informed workplaces. So LinkedIn, you can find me out there.
But to answer the question of where do people do, why is it needed to have that support? Let people know that part of it.
Oh, the why. Yes. I just think there are so many on that road. When you start walking that road of moving through grief, there can be potholes that might stop us. There might be times when that overwhelm just shuts us down. And it's so helpful to have someone just walking along with you and facilitating that inner journey. And that's really how I think of my work, is as the facilitator. I lay out the process, the grief recovery method, and I just help people walk through it and support them, so that there really is this sense of hope that does rise, because you are taking those action steps and you have accountability, where it can be very easy to get stopped in your tracks when you start this journey of grief recovery.
Well, for me, I'm super proud that I created what I wish I would have had. Like the type of person that I am, and what I wish, like what I was desperately looking for when my mom died, I could not find. I found people describing grief. I found people to even support me in my grief, but I didn't find anyone telling me how to get better. Like I just didn't find it. And for me, neuroscience was such a game changer for me. And so, if you're someone like me that you're just like, I just need someone to tell me what to do, like literally, but our little 5-step framework process that we created is sequential. It's a process that you go through, and it's intentional. Step 1 is step 1 for a reason, and step 5 is step 5 for a reason. We lead people through this process that is progressive and gets them to a place of healing and wholeness and looking forward to their future. Another quick thing I want to say is that I'm very different than counseling. And I know there's different types of counseling and whatnot, but in my opinion, counseling is a lot about analyzing the past and processing your emotions about past events. coaching, my coaching is very much about moving forward. It's very forward focused and action oriented. So it's like, what are the actions you need to take to get to your preferred future? What are the muscles you need to build? What are the skills you need to develop? How can we help you, hold you accountable, and teach you the things that you need to know so that the choices you make about your future and what you want it to look like, you actually have the tools to be able to create that, you know? So it's a little bit about how coaching and counseling are different, and specifically my coaching. And I'm super proud and passionate too that we created different lanes. Even if people resonate with me and they want to learn this process, I understand some people want to work with a coach one-on-one. Some people are going to do better with a small group of people that they're going through the process with. Some people, you know, want to kind of do it yourself, but they just want to be surrounded by community and get some support. So we have solutions for any of those levels. You know, I made a deal with God that anyone that would cross my path will have every tool at their disposal to get the fullness of healing. And so, yeah, those are the kind of the different lanes that folks can connect and work with us. But all three of those lanes are all learning the same. We call it our grief relief process. That is, again, biblically based and neuroscience informed to help you move through grief and get back to living a life you love. And if you're looking for me, Grace for Living After Loss. We have a YouTube channel. We have a Facebook group. Kelly at Grace for Living After Loss. If you want to email me directly, those are all the ways you can find me.